everybody, this is going to be a offlane hero tier list for 7.31D. Now, I think an important thing about an offlane hero tier list is that first and foremost, I couldn't find a tier list that had offlane heroes. And I think that's partially because people come into my chat all the time saying, BSJ, what do I do when I have a Spectre offlane? Or a Wraith King offlane, or my offlaner's playing like a carry. So I think the most important thing about this tier list is all the heroes that I put not offlaners PSA section. So just to TLDR what offlaners are meant to do, they're meant to be cores that do get farm, but they pressure while farming, meaning that they play aggressive on the opponent's side of the map and taking away the opponent's farm, or they're playing super dangerous areas on their own side of the map such that their carry and mid can farm more safely. So I want you guys to know that offlaners are meant to farm, but they're meant to be heroes that secure dangerous farm and also lock up objectives like pushing heroes or Roshan controlling heroes. But let's go ahead and get into it. What heroes are offlaners, which ones are not, and the best offlaners of 7.31D.
Banana slam jam.
So Abaddon, he used to be an offlaner. Maybe in the future he'll come back, but he really is just a 5 now. So I'm going to put him in the currently not offlaners section. Alchemist, I'd put him in B tier. I think he is a solid offlaner that people have actually been picking at the highest bracket, and they'll occasionally go the Radiance build, but it's much more about like maybe you get a Radiance, but then you're going like Wraith Pact, Blink, Ags for your teammates. You can go straight Ags. It's more of a support role type of Alchemist, but honestly in pubs, it might be kind of griefing because you do play the game like a carry and maybe your teammates won't adjust best to it, or maybe they'll just get mad. Not an offlaner. Contrary to what Jenkins would like to make you think, this hero is not an offlaner. He was only specifically picked in competitive as an offlaner against Medusa when Medusa was the most broken hero in the carry role. But no, Anti-Mage is not an offlaner. Not an offlaner. For lower MMR brackets, I think Axe is higher up. But the issue with Axe is that he is a really weak laner, level 1 and 2. And his win rate in Herald and such is really high, but his win rate in my bracket is not very high. So I'm going to put him at a C because even though I think he's actually a D or an F, if the hero is able to get off to a decent start, then he's quite powerful. So if you're in games where people aren't pressuring you properly in lane, his ability to get permanent scaling from his ultimate is quite nice. Batrider's been played a bit as an offlaner. There's a lot of toxic offlane ranged heroes right now. I think Batrider's kind of the reject out of all of them. I think the hero's the best played mid, unless you are just a Batrider specialist. So I would put him in D because if you're super good at Bat, he's probably the last ranged hero you'd want to pick, maybe in like B or C tier. But for most of you, he's going to be D. Now, Beastmaster, I'm putting him in S tier. That hero is busted right now. So what makes Beastmaster so strong is the hero conceptually, once he gets his items, is always strong. It's been that way every single patch. And the only limiting factor for this hero is his laning phase. And right now, you can either do the boar build, but a lot of people are favoring the Axis build against heroes that are either good at killing the boar or heroes with high armor, because axes are now magical damage. So this hero basically has 2 different ways to build in lane, and then he secures objectives, he controls areas, he secures Roche, he gives your team auras, damage, lockdown, literally everything your team needs. So he's one of the top offlaners right now. Bloodseeker, I think, is predominantly a carry, but I think he has a place as an offlaner still, probably a little bit above Axe. I think he's just a better carry, but honestly, if you're playing against carries that rely on a lot of mobility, then Bloodseeker can still be a decent pick. Bounty Hunter, oddly enough, wasn't really played much at the start of the patch, but what's happening with the carry role right now, if you kind of saw my tier list, a lot of these heroes like Bristleback, Alk, even like Pudge, Lifestealer's coming into popularity. And what I would say about these heroes is they all want to stay in lane. They all want to occupy the safe lane as long as possible. And Bounty Hunter is literally the worst offlaner to want to stay in lane against because he just yoinks you. He just takes your gold nonstop. So people are building Bounty Hunter offlane and they're going either Hood or Vanguard and then Ags. Basically the Pudge build, but you obviously operate very differently than Pudge. But you give yourself a regen item, which is going to allow you to literally Janata the carry or support without taking damage. significant damage. And then you just go Ags. And this hero used to suffer against 5-man lineups that just grouped up. But with Ags, if you get it by a decent timing, you don't mind. You're just tracking people, shurikening them, stealing their money, actually doing relevant damage. I put the hero in A tier. No cap. I would put Brewmaster, probably end up being low B tier. I think he's a hero that in the right hands would be A tier, but even then he's counterable, so he'd have to be picked like later on. The likes of like Weaver Jug type carries can just be a real nuisance for Brewmaster's laning phase, which tends to be kind of weak. But if you're like really good at changing the stances, really good at microing the Brewlings, this hero is definitely strong. Bristleback is straight up a better carry right now than he is an offlaner, but I would still put him in A tier. I feel like if you know how to push your limits as Bristle, constantly playing aggressive and just build to be super tanky with spell lifesteal items, and people aren't buying Spirit Vessels against you, you got to make sure you go Sanj and Kaya, so when people break you with Silver Edge, it just doesn't last very long. The hero is just insanely powerful, generally speaking. Broodmother offlane, I think she's more of a mid right now. I'll put her like low D tier because I don't understand too much about the hero, but I really just don't see it in my bracket. Centaur is a solid F tier. I haven't seen him more than twice this entire patch, and he's just weak compared to other offlaners. I would stay away from picking him ever if you're really trying hard to win. CK is probably like high D tier, maybe low C tier. I feel like last patch was one of the most powerful heroes in Dota, and then not much changed, but other heroes just got better, and CK just feels relatively lackluster. He doesn't win like every lane like he used to, thus, I don't think he's that great. Chen surprisingly is played a bit off lane, but for the sake of you guys, I will just put him as not an offlaner. I will just say, like, there are players like Zai who play him off lane, but I think it requires incredibly high understanding of Dota to make this hero work off lane. Klinks is not an offlaner. He's a carry, maybe a mid. Clock is more of a support. He was tried as an offlaner during the start of the patch. I think he's still viable as an offlaner. He's probably like bottom C tier because like he has a place, but it's just hard to still find the farm on the hero that you need. But I think he's still strong enough if you really enjoy playing Clockwork. See him as not an offlaner. Darkseer, he's another one of those heroes, like in the right hands, he could be strong, but I think in general, he loses his lane, and in pubs, that's pretty bad. It's like the hero recovers really well and gets his items and helps the team in a lot of different ways with Surge and Wall, team fight contribution, but right now he just feels relatively lackluster. Not an offlaner. I think Death Prophet is probably low B tier. She's basically if the other annoying ranged offlaners are banned. Also, she's really good against these strength carries and like dual strength lineups. So if you see like Bristleback carry, Tiny Mid, or something like this, Death Prophet's definitely super strong. So she's just situational, but I think she's super strong in those situations. Not an offlaner. I would put Doom top of C tier. I think he has a place. I just think he's a little bit greedy. People tend to be going like the phase Midas build still, building to be like, you're effectively a 2.5, maybe a 2 in terms of farm priority for your team. In pubs, that can just sometimes backfire. DK, probably low B tier as well. I just think the nerfs, just like him and CK, they got slightly nerfed and other heroes just became more powerful. So I think the hero's still fine if you need a point-click stun, gives you a little bit of tower pressure. He's definitely a good hero for people who are newer to the off lane and want to play a more straightforward type of game. He definitely just struggled because of the BKB nerfs, I think, as well. Not an offlaner, for the love of God. I would say Earthshaker is predominantly not an offlaner. I don't want this hero offlane. I'll put him like low D tier because he's really good against illusion heroes, like PL and such, but that's about it. Otherwise, reserve this hero for a 4, and I just don't think he's that powerful right now in general. I would say Earth Spirit's largely not an offlaner. He's either a mid or a 4 from what I've seen. ET, probably low D, high F tier as an offlaner. I've seen these like Grandmaster tier ETs sometimes go crazy with that Mask of Madness Ags build. If you love it, go for it. But generally speaking, think he's just weak overall as a hero. Wouldn't really pick Ember offlane. Same with Enchantress. I mean, Enchantress, she has her patches where she's an offlaner. I don't think this is one of them. Enigma, I would put probably here, maybe here. High B tier. He's like a mid tier annoying offlane illusion or a ranged hero. He has a couple builds. You can do the whole blink BKB thing if they have no BKB piercing disables. You can do like the Wraith Pact Spirit Vessel build, where it's just really hard to fight into you and you play more like a pushing hero. He's got a couple different builds, wins most matchups, I would say. Struggles against the likes of Bristleback and Alk as carries, but aside from those, he feels pretty powerful. For the most part, Face of Void's not an offlaner. I think Jakiro offlane's a freaking meme. I think there's sometimes you can make it work, but I don't know. This hero's mid game is so freaking weird. I feel like he's a Death Prophet in the sense that he takes the tower, has like pretty good mid game damage, and he just doesn't scale nearly as hard as Death Prophet. He can never go in. He's not like, he's like tanky level 1, but he's not actually tanky as the game goes on. So please don't. This can be played off lane, but I think he's like strictly better supporter mid in pub settings. So I'll just say not an offlaner. Kunkka's probably D tier off lane right now. He's more of a mid laner right now, if picked. And I think he's like mediocre strength as a mid laner. I just don't think he really fits the description of like what you want out of an off lane this patch, which is a lot about pushing or reliable pressure on the map. Legion, been seeing a bit more of her, but I think she's still probably like right here, maybe like above Axe. Yeah, the hero's got like a decent laning phase, but overall it just feels like there's always a better hero. Leshrac is not an offlaner right now. It's not offlaners. This is a carry or a mid. Not an offlaner. Lycan's probably the reject out of all of the summons heroes, but he's like still viable. I'd say he has to be like maybe 8th, 9th, like 7th, 8th pick or 10th pick in pubs. He's probably like up here. If you really like playing Lycan, you can make it work. He's just a Beastmaster, but in the grand scheme of pubs, he doesn't have a lockdown. So he kind of needs like other heroes to help him do his job. People need to rotate to you, pressure, all that kind of stuff. Magnus is probably mid-C tier. I just don't see him all that much, but I don't think he's super weak, and his team fight and lockdown's always nice. He just doesn't boot the carry out of lane. I told you a lot of carries like to just sit in their lane for a while, and I feel like a lot of the offlaners that are good are either ones that naturally win their lane or eventually boot you out of your lane. And Mag just never really does that. Mars, similar to Mag, good team fight, decent laning, but he never really boots out these carries. Most carries in the current patch can just stay in lane versus Mars even when he hits 6. In the right hands, Monkey King's an offlaner, but I think he's more of a 4 or a carry, even a mid against melee heroes. I would just not pick him off lane for the most part. His game plan's like super awkward as an offlaner. I think it's just difficult to make it work. I would say for the most part, Nature's Prophet is not an offlaner right now. He's more of a carry. Actually, the way the offlaners are just aggressive on the map in a way that like draws attention to themselves. Nature's Prophet's annoying, but I feel like he farms the map more like a carry right now, but I also wouldn't recommend you pick him carry. So, I mean, I'd probably put Nature's Prophet, since he's like a decently strong hero, I'd probably put him like top of D, but I feel like he's just not an offlaner. So unless you are already a Nature's Prophet specialist, just stay away from this hero. In terms of pubs, I'd say Necro's probably low B tier, but I don't think he's that great. What I mean by that is he kind of gets outpaced by these carries. I feel like Sniper and Bristle own him, actually. Bristle used to get owned by him, but now the timings are just like warped. And then there's a lot of carries like Jug and Lifestealer that just become really hard to kill, and natural nullifier builders can be super annoying. He's okay, you know? He can be super toxic, strong laner, but his mid-game feels awkward if he's played offlane. Night Stalker, definitely A tier. A lot of pucks right now. A lot of backline squishy supports like Wyvern that just have to be jumped. And Night Stalker's probably the best offlaner at just removing these backliners from the game. His laning stage is somewhat reliable. It's not like special, but it's okay. Minute 5, he's going to do fine. Definitely feels pretty strong right now. Omni's not. Do not pick this offlane, people. I honestly think Pango's not really an offlaner right now. He got nerfed enough where it feels like every time I have a Pango offlane, he just has minimal impact. I'd put him probably like mid-C tier as an offlaner. I think he's more of a mid. Pudge, probably high B tier. With the right supports, he can apply a ton of pressure. I think it's more specifically that he's not against like Ursa, Monkey King kind of heroes that just crush him in lane. If he's against like some sustain type carry like PL, Spectre, you know, this type of stuff, if you see that, this hero can be like insanely strong. And you just farm aggressively on the map. Build just like a normal core Pudge. Sadly, Pudge is a strong hero right now. I'd say Quap's generally not an offlaner, and if she was, I'd probably put her like here. I've seen people play Quap offlane, but she just whenever people pick Quap offlane, I feel like they don't understand what offlaners are supposed to do in the game, you know? She doesn't take objectives, she doesn't gank people, she doesn't control areas. I feel like she just doesn't fit. Razor! S tier! Razor. This may be a surprise to you guys. This hero is absolutely bonkers. I just got done playing against Amar yesterday, and I loaded up the game. He was Razor on the other team, and it said, this player currently has a 16 win streak as Razor. And we lost. If you want to learn Razor offlane, please just watch Amar, ATF. He's from OG. The hero, you take your Q level 1, you put 2 points in your W to win the lane, then you max out Q for farm, then you just leave your W at 2 points and max out your E. The hero, in good games, the carry is destroyed. In bad games, the carry has to leave the lane anyways because they don't want to get linked. The hero naturally forces you to gank him with like 3 or 4 heroes because he's so fast, and 1 hero or maybe 2 is not enough because he removes 1 hero with a link. The hero he can build a lot of different items. You know, he usually just goes like BKB. I've seen halberds, Shivas, ACs, refreshers, blink daggers, just to like make sure you link the right target. Yeah, I mean, the hero's just freaking busted right now. Like, if you don't know why, because Razor's like not intuitively, like, he's not an intuitive hero. You don't look at him and go, this is what this hero does. You just gotta watch an Amar replay, copy it, and just see for yourselves. It is my worst nightmare if I see Razor plus melee 4 right now. Sand King, I could almost say he's not an offlaner this patch. He's really weak. He's probably top of D tier. He just doesn't boot carries out of lane. He's not nearly as strong in lane as these other offlaners. I'm just not afraid if I'm a carry player and I see Sand King. Not an offlaner, unless you're Jenkins and you want to lose. Now, this is a controversial topic, but guys, offlaners are meant to farm aggressively and be active in the game and not AFK. So no, this hero is not an offlaner. It may seem like he has a stun, he has skeletons to push towers, but at the end of the day, the hero's laning phase is just not strong enough, and good players will shut this shit down. So maybe this works in like 1 or 2k MMR, but PSA, this one has to go in the top left of the not offlaners PSA, so everybody sees it. He is not an offlaner. Not an offlaner. Slardar, he's probably top of C tier. I think he's really good against these beefy cores, really good against these Pudges, these Bristles, these Alks. But I think there's just enough bad matchups in the safe lane. You can check out my Slardar guide if you want to know what those are, where I feel like his laning stage is like, eh. People are going like Mask of Madness BKB though. Mask of Madness BKB Blink or Mask of Madness Blink BKB on Slardar. Spirit Breaker, probably D tier, probably along the same lines as Sand King. I feel like Spirit Breaker has high influence in the game, but his laning stage, I even heard Quakefa say it himself, who loves Spirit Breaker, like, you're basically giving the enemy carry free farm. Like, pretty much no matter what the matchup is. And I just think in terms of winning pubs, giving the enemy carry good farm knowingly with your pick is just not a good idea. Tide Hunter, probably around here. Decent lane, decent team fight. Feel like he just doesn't force objectives himself. There's a lot of heroes right now that can kind of just kill you conveniently, like the Razors and the Bristlebacks. Like, they don't commit heavily to killing you, and you'll just die over time. So Tide's usually really good in metas where there's like stun combos, you know, like the DKs and the Sand Kings, where you have to have somebody walk in front and because of Kraken Shell he doesn't die. I feel like there's just not much of that going on right now. The heroes that are stunning you are like puck and shit, so it's like really hard to ravage them. Timbersaw, probably A tier here. His win rate in pubs is pretty low, but if you're like a super good Timbersaw player, the hero is he's just the same hero he's always been. Once he gets level 3, if the lane's going okay, he always does well. Super good against these tanky strength heroes. High output of damage, aggressive farming. Just everything you want out of an offlaner. But if you don't play this hero like you have a screw loose where you're trying to be always in the face of the opponent, he's definitely lackluster. Not an offlaner. Tiny's probably like mid B tier offlaner. Strong hero. I think he's just better mid or 4. But he can be played offlane. Not an offlaner. Tusk, probably top of C tier. The hero has a place. Tag team is really strong against these tanky cores as well. Can have decent farming potential with the snowball and shard build. Also, you have to consider the kick is really good against these positional-based tanky boys. You kick them into your base, you kick them away from their team, kick them like Jenkins kicked the rest of Arkosh. Underlord, probably low C tier. Probably like around here. Hero's okay. Strong laner. Just awkward mid-game, doesn't make plays, doesn't take buildings. He's like global presence, but you kind of have to have your team make use of that. So mid-C tier. Not really an offlaner, not an offlaner. I'd put Venge, who's I don't think is much of an offlaner, but gets picked sometimes. Probably middle C, probably low C, like around here. Can be a strong laner. Same idea as Tusk, where she offers a lot of single target physical damage and also displacement of these heroes, so that can be useful. But I think there's just better heroes. Venomancer, probably one of the weakest of the ranged heroes. He's probably low C like this. He basically dominates the lane the least out of all the annoying ranged heroes. Viper, I would put him S tier because Viper's like the hardest hero to lane against. But I think this hero is a lane-winning, potentially game-losing type of hero. His mid-game is really awkward, but he absolutely dumpsters almost every carry in lane. And if you understand how to get through like 8 to 20 minutes on this hero, usually you consider like being a frontliner on the map with like Dragonlance BKB, or going like Spirit Vessel Boots of Travel and connecting to fights and just using the Spirit Vessel as like an insane way to kill people. Yeah, I mean, the hero is just super reliable in lane. Needs a melee 4 though. Visage, he has like an insanely high win rate, so I'm probably putting him at the low A. And that seems weird if I say it in that order, but the hero just gets really hard countered by these tanky cores in the safe lane, such as the bristles. Heroes like Timbersaw that you just can't kill with the birds. If it's like a later Visage pick and they haven't a way to like AoE control your birds, this hero's insane. But if you pick him early, you're very vulnerable to just getting cheesed or like just not being able to kill anybody, basically. Not an offlaner, not an offlaner, not an offlaner. Not an offlaner. Oh, there's a Wraith King thing too. We'll put that there just to remind people he's not an offlaner. Not an offlaner and not an offlaner. Okay. So there's definitely a few of these heroes that are debatably played in the offlane, such as like sometimes I've seen Weaver, sometimes Abaddon, sometimes Undying. But for the most part, if you're looking to be a fundamentally sound offlane player, these heroes should be avoided. In terms of this patch specifically, I'm just reviewing my tier list here. I think this is pretty good. As a carry player myself, this tier list is like inversely proportional to how much I enjoy seeing this hero in the off lane for the opponent team. If I knew I was laning against this hero, how bad would I feel? And I'd say this is about right. So yeah, let's conclude our tier list for offlaners for 7.31D. Hope you guys enjoyed. Get out there and grind some MMR. See ya.